Playing the Titan is an experience that has no equal. It makes me feel like I'm in control of an unstoppable machine, and my first thought is always, let's see what this thing can do. Destiny 2's Beyond Light expansion brought with it 3 new subclass branches, the Revenant Hunter, Behemoth Titan, and Shadebinder Warlock. In this 3-part video series, I'll be showcasing my first builds for each class, and today in part 2, we're going to dive into the Behemoth. If you missed my Revenant Hunter video, you can check the link in the top right now. With that said, it's time to smash our way into today's video. Let's get started. Since I first got my hands on the Behemoth, it hasn't felt like an incredibly powerful subclass branch, but after a lot of practice and time spent trying to understand the value of its abilities, my opinions are starting to change. So to start off, we're going to break down those abilities. Our melee is Shiver Strike. Holding your melee button will activate a dash, and letting the button go will release a punch that damages, knocks back, and slows the target hit. Your super is Glacial Quake. While your super is active, your light attack is the same as your Shiver Strike melee ability, but your heavy attack is a powerful ground slam that sends out shockwaves that freeze enemies and spawn stasis crystals. Both abilities have interesting applications, but we'll talk more about them as the build shapes up. Just like with the Revenant, 2 abilities aren't enough to make the Behemoth complete, so we have to fill the rest out with aspects and fragments. These provide additional active and passive abilities for the subclass. There are currently 2 aspects available for the Behemoth. Tectonic Harvest causes shattering a stasis crystal to create a stasis shard. When collected, shards reduce the cooldown of your melee. The shards can be collected by you and your allies. Tectonic Harvest allows you to slot 2 fragments. Cryoclasm enhances your slide, increasing its distance, and causes sliding into stasis crystals or frozen enemies to shatter them. Cryoclasm allows you to slot 1 fragment. Okay, now that we've got the base abilities and aspects locked in, I'm going to turn my attention to exotics. The Icefall Mantle is a new Titan exotic that came alongside Beyond Light, and its effect has interesting synergies with a subclass that likes to charge fist first into chaotic situations. Its exotic perk changes your barricade into an overshield. On activation, it emits a pulse that slows enemies. While the overshield is active, you can't sprint, slide, or use your lift movement ability, but the durability you gain makes up for it. In general, charging into close quarters combat in higher difficulty content in Destiny is a death sentence, but with a decently hefty overshield, you can Shiver Strike directly at a mini-boss or champion, activate your Icefall Mantle, freeze said enemy, and continue fighting without worrying as much about death. With that said, the Icefall Mantle alone isn't enough to keep you alive in intense combat, so we're going to turn our attention to armor mods. The Beyond Light expansion reworked some defensive mods and improved their effectiveness significantly, so we're going to slot them to help us lean into a tanky playstyle. Concussive Dampener reduces the damage taken from area attacks, and elemental resistance mods can help against specific combatants. Europa is populated with a lot of Fallen, so I'll be using an arc resistance mod most of the time, but other enemy factions would benefit more from other elemental resistances. Next, in our combat mods, the Charged with Light mod Reactive Pulse will give us an edge in close quarters. While charged with light and surrounded by 3 or more enemies, you'll emit an arc pulse that damages nearby enemies. Its secondary effect grants an overshield while performing finishers. This makes them a lot safer and can help you mitigate against enemy attacks when used at the right time. The arc pulse emitted by Reactive Pulse does solid damage, and I want it to activate often, so I'll be using stacks on stacks, taking charge, and shield break charge to keep my charges of light flowing consistently. At this point, we've built ourselves a solid, tanky build, but we've got some stasis fragments to play with. Unfortunately, there aren't any fragments that increase our durability, so I'm going to pick fragments that improve my subclass's abilities and aspects. Whisper of Fissures and Whisper of Shards have great synergy with our Cryoclasm slide. Fissures increases the damage and size of shattered stasis crystals or frozen enemies, and Shards speeds up our grenade cooldown when we shatter a stasis crystal. To spawn those crystals consistently, I'll be using the Glacier Grenade. For the final slot, Whisper of Hedrons will give us bonus weapon damage whenever we freeze an enemy. Our uptime on this effect won't be great because it can be difficult to land freezes with Glacier Grenades, but it'll apply when we really need it, like after we use our Shiver Strike Icefall combo on a champion or mini-boss. Okay, so once again, I just dumped a lot of information on you, but don't worry. We're going to head out into the field and talk more about the nuances of this build, the playstyle it creates, and the strengths and weaknesses within. Alright folks, we're in the field, we're on the moon, and we're going to head into a lost sector so I can talk about the different mechanics that we have at our disposal in an environment where I'm not going to get instantly destroyed. Alright, K1 Communion, here we are. The first thing to make note of is the fact that the Icefall Mantle has a tremendous benefit in the form of an overshield that you can activate, but it has a lot of drawbacks as well. And the biggest drawback is the reduction in your ability to move around. I can no longer use my lift abilities when I have this overshield active. I can no longer sprint, which also means I can no longer slide. But I can take a huge amount of punishment. The environment that we're in right now is pretty low level, so the overshield is going to seem ungodly strong, but even in legend and master content, the overshield is strong enough to let you survive a lot of shots from enemies. So right now I'm unbelievably strong. I'm like a god, but in other environments I'm just going to be a lot tougher to kill. And realistically, what I'm going to want to do with the Icefall Mantle and the playstyle for it is I want to have a mixture of crazy offensive in-your-face plays and some more subdued plays where I'm sitting back and in cover and challenging enemies, but I'm challenging them with extra defenses, so I'm even safer than I normally would be. Because you got to imagine, right? If you're in cover, you're safe. But if you're in cover with an overshield, you're double safe. And that's one of the cool things about the Icefall Mantle, is it can turn a normally advantageous situation and position into the safest place that you've ever been. The next thing that we can show off a little bit here is the Cryo Slam, the Shiver Strike, and the Icefall Mantle. You saw there that the Shiver Strike has a small area of effect on it that slows nearby enemies on hit, and it always slows the main target that you hit, and activating the Icefall Mantle emits a pulse that slows nearby enemies, so you can combo the two together to freeze an enemy. I like to do that against champions and mini bosses to either immobilize them or to just get some extra damage on them for when the freeze ends and it shatters. The next thing that we can show off is the Glacier Grenade. If we don't break all the pieces of the glacier immediately by sliding through it, we can extend the duration of the improved ability regeneration so that we get a full recharge on our grenade from it. So normally if you slide into the crystal and break all 5 pieces at the same time, you won't get a full grenade back. But if you slowly break the pieces and drag it out a little bit, you'll get more cooldown reduction because you'll be extending the duration of that improved ability regeneration. And when you can fit it into your build, Demolitionist is a great thing to have because it will help to speed up that cooldown even more than it's already being sped up by the Whisper of Shards fragment. And we're also seeing the cooldown reduction that we're getting from picking up these little stasis fragments on our melee. It's about 15%-ish per pickup, which is nice. So even though we don't have a lot of melee cooldown reduction in our build, just by picking up the little shards, we get that cooldown reduction, so we will be able to use Shiver Strike decently often. Now that we've gone through the basics, we're going to head to Europa and try something a little bit more difficult. We're going to head into the Perdition Legend Lost Sector and deal with that. And here we are inside the Perdition Legendary Lost Sector. This one is pretty tough. There's a lot of enemies that try to pull a lot of shenanigans on me, but it should be fun. We've got a bunch of these harpies to contend with their arc shield, and we also have a Hydra that's trying to run away from me. But I'm going to charge in and Shiver Strike him, and then activate the Icefall Mantle to freeze him and chop him up. Got our health back. I want to push up on these guys because I am using a submachine gun as my primary shield breaking weapon. Let's activate the Icefall and just start challenging these guys. There we go. Got 13 seconds left on the overshield, and it's at about half strength, so we can continue playing decently aggressively while that is the case. So we'll put up that ice wall, break it down a bit. We've got our friend the champion pushing forward. The Icefall Mantle is protecting us from a lot of shots. I do believe the reactive pulse procced there and killed a bunch of those exploders, which was nice. And there's a bunch of enemies that are going to spawn here, but I don't have my Icefall, so I'm going to play passively. Let's reload our gun. Let's pop that guy. Yeah, we've got this Minotaur pushing towards me. Just going to stand in cover, wait for him to come through. We'll guard against his attack, and then chop him down. We've got our Icefall, but I want to use it for a very specific instance. There are some wyverns that spawn in this area, and I'm waiting for them to spawn before I activate my Icefall Mantle. I don't know where they are. There they are! Let's just get out of here. Sometimes you gotta use Shiver Strike to get back to cover. And that moment right there, I was a little bit scared of whether or not I was going to be able to actually walk back to cover or even slide back to cover. So I felt like Shiver Strike was the better option. We got one target down. The overshield from Reactive Pulse on Finisher helped me to stay safe there. Now I can challenge these guys a little bit, but you know what? Let's go into our super now that the overshield is gone, and we can really beat these guys up. And we can combo this guy out and keep him frozen. And that should be enough to kill him. Yes, it was. Perfect. And all the stasis crystals we created will help us get cooldown reduction on our grenade in the future. Now, against champions is my favorite time to use the Icefall Mantle because it allows you to really push up and challenge them and see what they're made of. And you can just go toe-to-toe with them, and it's so satisfying to do so. Goodbye. Alright, now we've got the final boss area. Icefall is on cooldown. So I'm going to play a little bit passively until we get it back up. Let's kind of maneuver around a little bit. Get that cooldown reduction. Uh-oh. There we go. This is what I needed. This is not what I needed. I'm scared now. Ah, crap, I'm gonna die. Why are you still alive? Okay, he's dead. Ooh, that was close. Alright, we got the boss down. We've got our Icefall Mantle back, so I'm going to pop it behind cover, and now we can just start working on these guys. We can work our magic. You can be frozen. The reactive pulse is working overtime. The main reason I'm able to keep the uptime on reactive pulse so high is because of shield break charge. Every time I break an enemy shield, I'm getting a new charge with light, and I have stacks on stacks equipped as well. So every time I get a charge with light, I'm getting 2 charges. That synergy is amazing in encounters that have a lot of shields, and there's a bunch of places on Europa where there are shields everywhere. So it's very easy to maintain a constant flow of charges with light for reactive pulse. Ah, I forgot to open the chest. Hey, I did not get an exotic. Never mind, I did get an exotic. Congratulations to me. Now, we're not done yet. We're going to go into one more environment so we can see how the Icefall Mantle can interact with a slightly different suite of enemies. So we're going to go into the Empire Hunt for the Technocrat at the Legend difficulty. But before we go in, I have to change my loadout a bit because the weapons that I'm using don't really work super well in there. All right. The first section of the Technocrat's Empire Hunt has a barrier servitor, and this can be a very frustrating support enemy because it will shield all the surrounding enemies, and the only way to get it to stop doing that is to either freeze it or break its barrier. So what I'm gonna do is actually wait for my health to come back and then I'm gonna charge in and hit him in the face with Shiver Strike, and then freeze him with the Icefall Mantle. So now that the barrier servitor is frozen, I can chop up all of his cronies, or most of his cronies, and pop his barrier and be done with him. Alright, we got another barrier servitor up ahead, so that means he's going to be shielding a lot of enemies. And what I want to do, just like before, is run in and freeze him and then deal with his cronies. So now that we got him frozen, we can chop up all the side guys. Unfortunately, he came back. We still got a little overshield left. We can pop him, deal with the cronies, and finish chopping up the rest of the boys. It's tricky, man. The Icefall Mantle, it's been a difficult learning process, but now that I understand the limits of how much damage I can take and how much damage I need to dish out to enemies before they die and how to finesse things, it feels a lot better. But it was a learning curve. It did take me some time to get used to how this exotic is supposed to work and what it can do for me. And there we go, that's going to do it for my first build for the Behemoth Titan. It has been a tremendous amount of fun using this combination with the Icefall Mantle. The defensive options that were added and adjusted in the Beyond Light expansion are surprisingly strong. And it's been really nice trying to engage with close quarters combat playstyles and not getting completely obliterated. There are still limitations to how long I can fight and how aggressively I can push, but things like the Icefall Mantle, Concussive Dampener, and damage resistance mods for the different elements are doing a great job of making me feel as though I can push boundaries and push into enemies without getting completely destroyed. With all of that said, we've got one more build coming for the Warlock's Shadebinder, and the Warlock is my main, so I've been very excited to get to him. So with all of that said, if you enjoyed this video and you'd like to support the channel more than you already do, just by watching, liking, subscribing, and commenting, you can head over to patreon.com/iBluairJgR to become a patron. As always, the name of the game is Destiny 2, the name of the channel is iBluairJgR. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.